Welcome to Sunday School. I'm Elder Robert Wilson. Thank you once again for allowing Sunday School to be part of your regular schedule. We look at our lesson today. Our subject is Woman of Samaria. We'll be looking at St. John chapter 4, verses 7 through 15, verses 23 through 26, and then verses 28 through 30. Now, Bible truth says God's love and gift of salvation is for all people. It's for all people. It's a one-size-fit-all deal. So it don't matter if you're rich or poor, you're included in God's salvation plan. It don't matter if you're black or white. It don't matter if you're educated or uneducated. You are included in God's salvation plan. So there's no need or no excuse for us to neglect or ignore such great salvation. So God's salvation plan and His love is for all people. So when we look at our lesson today, starting in verse number 7, it says, "There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat." So Jesus was getting ready. He had left Judea and he was making his journey. And on the way to Samaria. Now, to get to Samaria, it wasn't a good, clean path. You had to go through hills and rough terrain. So when Jesus got there, he was already tired and he was weary from that long journey. So when he got there come the woman of Samaria. She came to draw water from the well, which we know as Jacob's well. So he says, "Give me to drink." Now, why did he do this? Now, in verse 8 it says, For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. So they had separated themselves from Jesus doing something else. So he was there alone. He didn't have anybody else to ask. So she had came to draw water. And of course, she had a bucket to draw her water with. So he asked her to give me to drink. So in verse 9, it says, "Then said the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealing with the Samaritans." So this unlikely conversation began here at the well. This unlikely conversation began here at the well of Jacob. Now, even though it was an unlikely conversation, I say unlikely because at this time, the custom at this time, when Jesus was there, it was not permitted for a man to talk to a woman in public. And besides that, the Jews and the Samaritans, they didn't get along. So there were two things that made this an unlikely conversation. But even though it was an unlikely conversation, it was a needed conversation because Jesus' steps was ordered by God. He had need to go through Samaria. So Jesus began this unlikely conversation with her. So she said, "Now, how is it that you're going to talk to me? You know the custom here. How is it that you're going to talk to me? Me being a Samaritan and you being a Jew, you know that the Samaritans and the Jews don't get along together." So in verse number 10, Jesus answered her and said unto her, "If thou knowest the gift of God, and who it is that said to thee, Give me to drink, thou would have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water." Now, because of Jesus was having this unlikely conversation with her because of the custom of the time, he had her attention because she knew that any other man wouldn't have stopped and talked to her. So he had her attention. So he gave her three things in this verse right here to think about. Now, the first thing that he gave her to think about was the gift of God. He said, if thou knowest the gift of God. The second thing was that who it was that was saying this to her. And then he mentioned about the living water. So the gift of God is mentioned here. That is a divine gift. And it's talking about the Holy Spirit. So Jesus said, and who it is that said to thee. He was speaking around her, knowing that she had no idea who he really was. But if she had known, Jesus said that it would have been turned around, that she would have asked him for a drink of water. But Jesus mentioned this living water to her, which is, of course, is the Holy Spirit. So in verse 11, she answered him back. And the woman said unto him, Sir, if thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep, from whence then hast thou that living water? So she began to tell Jesus, look, sir, if you don't have a bucket, there's no way that you're going to be able to give me this water, because this well is deep. This is a deep well. You have no bucket. So how are you going to give me this living water? Now, we have to look at this and notice that this is beginning a conversation of the spirit and the natural. We see this in this verse right here. So she mentioned about him not having a bucket. So she is still using her natural mind. But of course, Jesus is talking about spiritual things. So now, in verse 12, the woman of Samaria continued her conversation with Jesus. And she said, Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? So, who is greater, Jesus or Jacob? And of course, it's Jesus. But what she was doing, she was trying to say that there's no way that you could outdo what Jacob has already done by digging this well. So by you not having a bucket and you not being able to actually grant what you were talking about, giving me this living water, there's no way that this could be true. So in her mind, Jacob was greater than Jesus, because there was no way that Jesus could perform what he had told her that he could do. So verse 13 says, Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh this water shall thirst again. Now Jesus is beginning to make a comparison of what's the spirit and what is natural. What's belong to the spirit and what is natural. So he told her that whosoever drinketh this water, meaning out of Jacob's well, will thirst again. But whosoever drinketh the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. Now this phrase springing up, meaning a continuous flow. Jesus told her that the water that I'm going to give you will give you a continuous flow up until and a continuous flow that will be everlasting. That would mean that it will be forever. A continuous flow forever. This means that the water from Jacob's well will only be temporary, with satisfying your need. But the living water that Jesus was going to give, it couldn't be hindered by your long journey, being tired and weary. It won't run out because you had a long journey. It won't run out because you had a hard day's work. It won't run out because of the heat of the day. But this living water, which is the Holy Spirit, will be with you always. And it will always be springing up. It will always be continuous. And it will last forever. So verse 15 said, the woman said unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Now we have to look at this and see that she is still using her natural mind, because Jesus is talking about living water, but all she can see and understand is water in a bucket. So she's still looking at water in a bucket and not water of the Spirit. So she said, give me this water so I won't have to keep coming back to get the water out of Jacob's well. So somehow she thought that Jesus had some kind of magically water that he could give her, and it would stop her or prevent her from wasting her time to come to the well every day to draw water. So Jesus told her in verse 23, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. The Father seeketh such to worship him. The hour cometh, meaning the time is now. And now is, meaning that Jesus is here. The time is now, and Jesus is here for this to happen. That we worship him, or worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Now we know worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth is representation of the Holy Spirit. We can remember when Jesus was getting ready to go back to the Father, and he told him, don't be afraid, or don't be worried, don't be discouraged, because he was going to send back the Comforter. And when he comes, the Spirit of truth, that he was going to lead and guide them into all truth. So that was the Spirit of truth, which is the Holy Spirit. So it said in verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. God is a spirit. There is no way that we can worship God except by the Spirit or in the Spirit. Now this is a new way of worshiping. This leaving the old way of a fleshly worship, and it goes over into the Spirit now. Now to worship God in truth is to worship God through Jesus, because Jesus was the sender or the giver of the Holy Spirit. So to worship God in truth is to worship God through Jesus. The woman said unto him, in verse 25, the woman said unto him, I know that Messiah is coming, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. And Jesus said unto her, I that speaketh unto thee am he. So Jesus reveals himself to her. He was talking with her all the time, revealing himself, revealing things bit by bit as the conversation went on. But now he reveals himself to her, and she understands this, that she have heard and perhaps read that there will be a Messiah that's coming, and his name will be Christ. And when he comes, he's going to tell them all things. So Jesus go ahead and he reveals himself to her and say, the one that you're speaking to is he. I am the Christ. I am the Christ. So Jesus reveals himself to her. So when Jesus revealed himself to her, the other disciples came back. You know, they had been gone into the town or into the city to buy meat. So when they came back, they marveled at Jesus talking to her. But no one questioned him. No one said, well, why are you talking to her? What are you seeking from her? So no one really bothered him about talking to the woman at the well. And when we get to verse 28, it said, the woman then left her water pot and went her way into the city and said to the men, come, see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ? Is not this the Christ? Is this not the one that we've heard about, that we've perhaps read about? So the talk and the reveal was so compelling that Jesus gave, that her eyes were open to a certain point. Her eye was open, and she was so convinced that she left her water pot there. She was there to draw water, but she was so compelled by what she had heard. She left her water pot and she went back to the city, to the men in the city, and she told them, look, come see this man that had told me everything that I had done. She said that there's no way that this man, this is what she's thinking in her mind, there is no way that he could have known the things, the personal things that he had told me. So she said, come and see this man that had told me everything that I had done. Said, is this not the Christ? Is this not the one that we have heard about? Then they went out of the city and came unto him. So she was so moved. She was so moved by what Jesus had told her and the conversation that they had, especially because he wasn't supposed to be talking to her. So this really got her attention. So she was so moved by it that she went into town and she told the men, and she was so compelling what she told them that they came out to see Jesus. They came out to see Jesus. Now, when we have this close encounter with Jesus, this real close, true encounter with Jesus, things changes. When Jesus revealed himself to us, then we become exposed. Just like the life of the woman at the well. Her life was exposed. Jesus told her things that she had done in her life that normally nobody else would have known. So when Jesus revealed himself to us, our life is exposed. So we have a choice at that point. We could either stay in the flesh, or we can go with the Spirit. Now, if we go with the Spirit, it becomes contagious to the other people that we encounter. So we move from no knowledge of Christ to receiving the Holy Spirit through Christ, and then gaining many for Christ.